All right, well, it is making headlines across the country, and we brought you the news first here yesterday afternoon around 12:30. GM moving its headquarters to the new Hudson site in 2025. It leaves really a lot of questions about the future of the RenCen and how reshaping that could impact commercial and residential builds across the city. There is a lot to talk about this, so go ahead and say hello to Kirk Pino. He's Crain's Detroit senior reporter covering commercial real estate. And Kirk, it's great to see you. I think some of the headlines surrounding this is like the, Detroit real estate deal of the year, or maybe it could be in the last 10 years or so. What went through your mind and all this that you have covered when you got the news yesterday that this was in the works and happening?
Well, what came to mind immediately was there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
This is a very complicated transaction and involves a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot that we still don't know. We certainly don't know the fate of the Renaissance Center yet. That will be discussed and analyzed over the course of the next year or so. We don't know how big GM's footprint is going to be in the new Hudson's Detroit office building. We honestly don't even really know how big their footprint currently is in the RenCen. These are all sort of unanswered questions that we hope to get answers to over the coming weeks and months.
And I think when we talk about what could be the future of the RenCen and looking at, of course, the flagship tenant now for that Hudson's building, it kind of brings the questions to mind about the commercial real estate that we have in the city right now and how much office space is actually being used right now. Can you give us a little bit of perspective on that regard?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how you calculate it. So the central business district has somewhere in the neighborhood of, call it 16 to 17 million square feet of office space. On any given day, the amount of lease space varies greatly compared to what is actually being occupied. By that, I mean, there could be leases for, let's say, 500,000 square feet, but on any given day, only 200,000 square feet of that is actually being used as a result of the coronavirus pandemic's impact on the way that companies and their employees work. So currently, the downtown area has a lease rate of, I believe, approximately 87%, but the downtown is nowhere near that full with regards to its office space, and that leads to a lot of questions about how those buildings in the future are going to be used, whether they're kept as office buildings, whether portions of them are converted into residential, or all of them are converted into residential. And these are all case-by-case discussions that are taking place and should take place with each individual landlord, and as they determine what their footprints are going to be.
Yeah, I think when I think about this, and it's such a huge announcement, and there was so much celebration when you saw everyone coming up and talking about it yesterday, from Dan Gilbert to Mary Barra to Mike Duggan. It still is just moving people from one space to another space downtown, and you have that challenge of what to do with the RenCen that was really built as a stronghold of once you are inside, you stay inside, and then you get in your car and leave. What are some of the conversations that people are having now about what could happen at the RenCen?
Yeah, cities don't really do urban planning like that anymore, the way that the RenCen was built 50 years ago. It was built as a fortress, essentially. It was bifurcated from the rest of the city by Jefferson. These days, urban planning is based more on, open concepts and, being accessible to all people. With regards to the RenCen, that poses the way it was built poses a lot of complications for its ultimate reuse and how that actually plays out. Are the towers, the office towers, which are the four buildings that are sort of flanking the 727-foot skyscraper that's the tallest building in the state, are those, poised for residential conversion? Are those some other type of conversion? All those are questions that analysts and architects and designers need to answer. It could be a mixture of all those. It could be none of those. We really don't know. There's certainly theories going around, but in terms of what the ultimate final use will be, that's something that's going to be revealed in the next, call it, 12 months or so.
Yeah, and there's really, when you talk about urban planning, there's really no argument that Dan Gilbert and Bedrock is really driving what the urban planning, the skyline is looking like in the city of Detroit and where things are placed. I guess give me the sense of the influence that now we are just seeing that Bedrock is having in terms of determining where things are downtown and how they are redeveloped.
I don't think there's really much question that the Bedrock Real Estate Company is the most influential developer and landlord in the city. They own millions of square feet of office space, and not just office space. They own a lot of different kinds of space. They own residential space. A few years ago, they branched into industrial space. They have parking decks. They have any number of other kinds of a bunch of retail. They have a a massive footprint that is not really rivaled by anyone in town. So they are going to be sort of driving the conversation with regards to future uses. There are certainly other large landlords in Detroit, the Ilitch family being one of them. General Motors, obviously owning a vast majority of the Renaissance Center, is also another one. But really, the market is dominated by Dan Gilbert and his team, which own this constellation of high rises and skyscrapers around Campus Martius and up and down Woodward.
So I'm curious, Kirk, do you think that there are other developers who are now in the suburbs who see this kind of move when GM is now going to be on Woodward? They've got, let's say, we don't even know how many employees will be there, but let's say several thousand, who will then be able to, go into small businesses, restaurants. Are there developers in the suburbs that say this could impact how I'm trying to fill my office space or build out office space in the suburbs, that this could attract more downtown?
It could, but we're talking a couple different animals with regards to the different sort of sub-markets in the commercial real estate industry. A Southfield developer and landlord who is very sort of concentrated in that suburb is going to be encountering a different environment in Detroit, just as a Detroit-centered developer and landlord is going to encounter a host of different issues in the suburbs than they do in the city. But either way you slice it, anyone that owns office space these days around Metro Detroit or around any sort of major metropolitan area is still trying to figure out in a lot of ways what to do with their buildings. You can say that they're leased at a certain rate, but they're really not occupied at that rate by and large. Southfield has been 20 to 25% vacant for decades, but the actual occupancy, the actual like butts and seats in Southfield is actually much less than that. So how the office landlords, view their steps going forward, they have to evaluate that on a case-by-case basis. And, Detroit and Southfield are going to be different animals, just like Troy or Farmington Hills or Novi are also going to be different animals than Detroit.
Well, there's going to be no shortage of articles that you're going to have to start writing starting today, Kirk, and we'll look forward to reading them. Kirk Pino, of course, from Crain's Detroit, senior reporter covering commercial real estate. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
All righty, sounds good.